everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are finally going to dye some yarn and roving with turmeric. In the May 2020 Paradise Fibers Fiber of the Month Club box, they actually included a little vial of turmeric and a suggested dyeing project that you can do at home. And along in those instructions, they gave a little YouTube channel, ChemKnits Tutorials, a shout out, which was really wonderful, and I really love working with them. Now, full disclosures, Paradise Fibers sends me their Fiber of the Month Club box for free to share and promote, and I do have an affiliate link, which means I do earn commission if you make purchases through their website through my link, which you can find in the video description. But I am really excited for this little nudge to finally do a project I've been wanting to do for a long time. Technically, I've dyed with natural based food colorings, and I believe the yellow was turmeric based, and so I know that that worked well, but I haven't specifically taken turmeric powder to dye yarn, and so I'm really excited to do it. Now, Paradise Fibers in that box included this beautiful 6 ounces of Mountain Meadow USA Cormo wool combed top, and it is so fluffy. I mean, see this fluff. And so we will be dyeing this according to the suggested protocol, approximately, that Paradise Fibers had in their newsletter. But in addition to that, I also want to dye 100 grams of Stroll fingering weight yarn, just as a little control, something for me to test and wash. First, I will be dyeing them sort of side by side, but I wanted to test the yarn. Even though superwash wool dyes differently from non-superwash, I just wanted something that I could be more aggressive with washing to get a better sense. So we're gonna do that, and so let's go get started. So Paradise Fibers recommends that you have about 3 liters of water per 4 ounces of wool. So I'm going to use 3 liters of water for the 100 grams of sock yarn that is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and then 4 liters of water for our 6 ounces of wool. Now, the instructions involve using 1 tablespoon of turmeric, and that is what we have in this nice little pot right here. But I want to dye a little more fiber with it, so I will be dividing it a bit. So we will have slightly less of the powder that we might have otherwise had. This is the pot with 3 liters of water, and I'm going to take, let's see, about 1/4 teaspoon. Let's go ahead and make it about half a teaspoon of the turmeric powder. And we will stir this up in a minute. I'm heating up the pot. We aren't using any mordants today, but I am using my dedicated dye equipment that I don't use for food, but you could probably do this in food pots and pans. So that's 1 heaping, 2, 3, 4, just semi-measuring, about 5, probably 1.5 teaspoons in here, and we're gonna stir these up nice and good. It's not hot yet, so I'm gonna rinse out the pot. We do want our spices to be well dissolved. Okay, and it recommends cooking for 30 minutes or until it is well dissolved, and I can see right now that we have like a suspension of powders, so hopefully it will go into solution a bit with cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and heat both of the pots for about 30 minutes. Now, there's a lot more pigment in the big pot where we plan to have the roving, but that is by design here. And so while we do this, let's go prepare our fiber. Now, this is where I'm actually going to deviate from the instructions a little bit. I thought about cake dyeing, so winding this yarn into a cake to be similar, but I think instead what I'm going to do, I've been going back and forth. Okay, I'm not going to do any resist on this. I'm just going to add it dry, which should give us some more tonal variation anyway. The instructions say to pre-soak, but I think dry should be fine because I like having more variation in color. I was considering doing a twisted skein like I like to do sometimes, but I think I'm gonna just leave this as more of a control. Now, as for our 6 ounces of this Cormo fiber, I am going to wind it into a relatively compact ball. This should allow the color to strike more to the outside than the inside, and also will sort of keep the fibers a bit protected during this process. I do have a spin dryer which will help us remove some of the excess water towards the end. But I was checking my spice drawer. I don't think I just have some turmeric, because I think that I'll need to get more, because I'm going to want to try this with cake dyeing. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to want to try yellow onions with cake dyeing too. That's another natural dye that works, in my opinion, really, really well right from the start. And I'm trying not to tangle this as I wind, but even going a little bit tight, this ball is getting large, which is a reason why I'm deciding not to pre-soak it, because I don't like having to manipulate fiber too much when it is wet. But yeah, we're just making a nice, and I know I'm not completely on camera the whole time, but a nice hand wound ball that is probably going to be the size of my head when all is said and done. And I'm trying now to wrap around. So one of the things that adding this to the pot while dry will do, as there's some fluff that goes through the air, is that will give us more of a difference between the color on the outside and the inside. If I were to pre-soak this, or if I were to wind it even looser, more color would be able to easily penetrate towards the center. But that depends on how quickly this color strikes. I have no idea if we should expect the pot to clear. And in fact, I'm gonna double check the instructions. So it doesn't seem like salt is really necessarily necessary, but it says traditionally the wool is also soaked in sea salt water for 5 minutes after dyeing, which is after the, I guess, soak and rinse. So I'm not entirely sure about that, because I haven't done, but we do know from the picture that we should see some variation in the tone in our beautiful roving. Paradise Fibers does recommend that you might want gloves. My hands tend to be a little stained anyway, so I'm not really worrying about that, but that is good to keep in mind. After 30 minutes of cooking, you can see that not everything has dissolved. There's still some like sediment on the bottom here in the pot, and my little fish turner is taking on some lovely color. But let's get started with our yarn. So this is our smaller pot. Hopefully, I think I have about a half teaspoon. Maybe that's not going to be a ton of pigment at all, but it's sort of just something for some amount of comparison. I'm not entirely dip dyeing, but I know that this is an absorbent yarn, which is why I was fairly comfortable not pre-soaking it in advance. Although, is it possible we might have a bit of a gradient? I'm definitely going to need to get more. I didn't want to move too much of the pigment away from the roving that we had, but gosh, I mean, is it clearing? I don't even know if you guys are in good focus. I think it might be clearing. So this secondary experiment might be slightly underwhelming. The colors, if they're striking fast, one reason could be, in this situation, because it's a superwash yarn, pigment in general strikes faster. There's no question at all to me that the pigment is absorbing. Okay, I am going to go ahead and leave this on low heat for about 30 minutes, but let's go and start the roving. I'm going to reduce the heat so you can see just how pigmented it is, and I have to say, it smells really, really good in here right now. Okay, I hope I'm not going to regret doing this dry, but here we go. and I am gonna have to press. Let's zoom in. There we go. All right, we might end up wanting some more liquid, but we do have some nice color here on the outside already. I don't want to agitate it too much, but the issue that I have is that the liquid isn't covering this. So what I'm gonna do, and our heat is on low, is I wanna add more volume. So here's another liter of water. And what adding more water is going to do is that it could affect the concentration of the pigment in here, which in some cases could have an effect on the overall color. It depends on if what we see ends up being concentration dependent or what. But I am encouraged. Here is another liter of water. So we now have 6 liters in this pot, about 1 liter an ounce. And now there is enough that I can, the ball has fluffed out a bit. There is a lot of pigment in here, and we are gonna let this all sit for about 30 minutes. Since this is nighttime when I'm doing this, I don't think I've got a really good read on the yellow that is present, but there is a good yellow on the Roving. And there's a nice pale sort of buttery yellow on the yarn, where again, like that water is definitely much more clear than it was before. And this is only like a couple minutes in, and there's a ton of pigment in here with the Roving, so now we'll just wait. There's definitely some pigment in here, but this one is relatively unchanged. I mean, it had mostly cleared onto the superwash yarn nearly immediately, and a lot less, the water had more pigment in it than it looks like we've gotten on the yarn. In contrast, our Roving has a lot more pigment in it. I'm not sure how obvious this is, but there was at least 6 times as much pigment in here. As for the liquid, there's still a fair amount of pigment in there. And what I haven't been able to do is check the sides much, but it's not that extreme. It's fairly subtle and less bright than what I was anticipating. But nevertheless, I'm going to turn off the heat on both pots now. And I'm gonna let this cool overnight, and we can check in the morning and see if we're still seeing a significant amount of pigment in the pot. And if there is, then I might heat it up a little bit again and add the yarn from the other pot into here to soak up this excess color as sort of a yarn mop. So yeah, I mean, we definitely got pigment. It's something that I would be excited to try to push further because things always look paler when they dry. But I mean, if this does exhaust, that means there won't be a lot of washing, and so that'll be really good. And I'm excited. Like, it's nice when there's something that's fairly easy to play with at home in the kitchen. But, you know, seeing this picture, the disappointment merely comes from seeing the picture and seeing that brighter, almost orange aspect there. This doesn't feel as bright, but I did reduce the total amount of pigment that we added. So we'll see. I have more of this bare fiber available, so we'll be able to compare to that, and I'll be able to compare the stroll to bare yarn, and so I will check back in the morning. The instructions do say that if you want a more vibrant yellow, to add an 1/8 teaspoon of tin crystals. I'm not sure what tin crystals are or if it's a form of mordant. It did say that this was dyed without a mordant, so I'm not entirely sure, but this does give us more to explore and investigate in the future. So maybe that's why our yellow doesn't seem to be quite as vibrant as what this potentially might be. And also there's differences when it comes to photographing and printing pictures anyway, so that is also worth considering. It is now the next morning, and there is no question there is still some pigment in here. there's no question there's also pigment in our yarn or on the roving, but what I'm going to do is, and I'm not checking back in, I'll show you the empty container from our superwash yarn in a little bit, but I'm going to transfer our superwash yarn, which does have some pigment in it, but not as much. Well, that seems to have almost picked up some immediately. I'm going to add it to this pot to help soak up some of that extra color. And I'm just going to bring this up to a low simmer. For reference, here is the other pan. You can maybe see that there are some particulates around the bottom, but most of that color has gone into the yarn, so I'm curious if we will see more go into it, which will then make the washing of the roving easier. We are bubbling, and let's just take a look. I still see a lot of pigment. Yeah, and it's unclear to me if, you know, our yarn mop has absorbed some or not, but what I'm going to do now is I am going to turn off the heat. I'm not even going to simmer for 30 minutes or anything like that. I'm going to turn off the heat and let this cool off. It's possible that the superwash yarn will absorb more. It's possible it won't, but either way, we're trying to get as much pigment as we can. Right, this has cooled. I am going to remove, and I would say in person the color looks more dramatic than it's looking to me on the monitor right now. And as for the color in here, there's still a little bit. I'm not sure if more is absorbed in here, but let's go wash the yarn first. Let's go wash the yarn first. One thing I'll say for sure, the yarn smells really, really good. This is actually a really pretty oh boy. I was like, this is a really soft yellow, and there is no question that we have some bleeding going on. That's one reason why I wanted to look at this yarn first, just to get a sense of what the washing will take. I'm now going to add some dish soap, and we'll fill this up. Ooh, look, we got some color on our nylon as well. So while I'm seeing bleeding, ooh, I'm not necessarily seeing color diminish in the fiber itself, which is encouraging. This color reminds me of the yellow of a lot of other natural dyes that I've played with so far this summer, and I'm not sure if any of those videos have come out yet, but yeah, it feels very similar. I will say though, that using turmeric is easier than going and collecting pounds and pounds of dandelions. Alright, I'm going to spend a little bit of time off camera rinsing this, and I'll pop back in when I think we're mostly clear. This really wasn't so bad. Like the water cleared really, really quickly with just a handful of washes. I think that the color that is in here is well set. There was just some excess that needed to be rinsed out. And again, I feel more pigment than what I feel like is coming through on the camera. Reminds me of tea, and it smells really good. The turmeric smells so good. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside because we might need this as a counterbalance for the roving. Here is our roving. The first thing I wanna do is dump that color from the bucket. You can see on here, I think, the particulates. Ooh, that's pretty cool. That added like a brighter yellow spot that we will want to rinse out. And we're going to need to carefully and slowly rinse this. I'm using some of that last rinse water that we had from the last one, and I'm going to fill this pot up completely with water, very carefully and gently, so we don't agitate that roving. So I'm now gently moving this, trying not to agitate. There are some like particles of the turmeric left in here, but it's, yeah, you can see You can see some of these little specks, and I'm not sure how easy it will be to rinse those out, because they might just be a little bit stuck in the fiber, but we'll try. And now I'll try to add, oh gosh, that feels like a lot, but we'll add a little bit of some soap. I always hate the washing stage a lot. Trying to make this nice and gentle. Okay, pull up. Am I seeing? Oh, I don't like moving it. Ooh, that looks brighter yellow down there. I don't know if all those particulates are going to come out, but I think what I want to do is I'm going to carefully dump this and then do the gentle refills of the pot twice, and then we will try to go and spin as much of the water out of this as we can. Here is the dry, or at least the mostly dry, I bet the roving could still be damp in the center, yarn that we dyed with turmeric. And here is a skein of bare yarn that we had started with. There is no question that we have dyed the yarn and there is a pigment change. The change is a fairly soft yellow. I'm still going to need to look into those 10 crystals that Paradise Fibers recommended, and I think I also want to try this again, but I want more turmeric present to try to intensify the color. I'm now going to take this Cormo roving and wind it gently onto a niddy noddy so we can try to see what kind of gradient, if any, we have here. I have no idea how much towards the center this penetrated, but I'm not sure if it shows up on camera, but there are areas that definitely feel more bright yellow versus the sort of beige color that we see. But we'll see if we see a lot of difference once I open this up. I'm not sure how well you can tell, but I do see some like tone lines from areas that were more on the outside versus being wrapped in. We'll see if this gets more extreme. There is a gradient here. It is really, really, really subtle. Maybe if I put the roving over like that, you can see a little bit better. There's no question that the darkest portions are deeper in tone than what was in the center. It is extremely soft and extremely subtle, but that color difference does exist. I'm excited to spin this at some point. I think it would be fun to spin and then chain ply to keep this gradient present in the yarn overall. And since the sections are fairly small overall, I don't think it would be a problem to just draft directly from it. It's still a tad damp at the palest end, but not bad. I think if I put the more, there's probably a little tonal variation in here, but the superwash yarn here, you can see the colors match more up here and less down here. But otherwise, the gradient on the roving is super, super, super subtle. I think more pigment and 10 crystals may make a difference. But this is the thing with dyeing yarn, and especially natural dyes. I find that there's a bit of a learning curve and a bit of trial and error that you need to experiment around with. I am thrilled with the quality of the fiber. It is super spinnable. It is still so, so, so soft, and I highly, highly recommend this fiber. Maybe next time we try, we can get more of a dramatic difference with the turmeric. I'm not disappointed. If anything, I am excited because I tried something I have never tried before. If you have done yarn or fiber with turmeric and had more, I guess, yellow results, let me know your conditions down in the comments, share tips. I consider all of this to be a learning experience, and honestly, I'm just happy that we got some real true pigment in here at all. I would like to give Paradise Fibers another thank you for not only giving me a shout out in the newsletter, but sending me more of this Cormo fiber. I highly recommend you go and check out the Mountain Meadow USA Cormo Wool Combed Top. This fiber is so soft and I am so excited to spin it. And it's also worth going and checking out the Paradise Fibers Fiber of the Month Club. I'll have my affiliate link to it in the video description. This club is $34.99 a month. That includes shipping within the US, and there are some options if you live further away from the continental states. Each month's box contains 6 to 8 ounces of fiber, of unspun fiber, in a variety of fiber contents and colorways and things ranging from natural to beautiful, blended with sparkle and glimmer. And each month is different and it's so much fun to check out. And I'll also leave a link in the video description to my Paradise Fibers unboxing playlist. I have unboxed this mystery subscription for about 2 years now, and they continue to delight and excite me with the care they put into these packages. Please subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel and stay tuned for some more natural dyeing videos to come up as our summer, where did the summer go? As the summer is starting to come to a close. I have taken a peek at a bunch of things around my garden and neighborhood, and I think that you will be really interested to see the results, which do range from a little underwhelmed to, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I do take a look into the effort that goes into getting the color and then to the final color. And I would say with turmeric, this was a very low effort project. It is really easy for people to find turmeric, and so that barrier to giving it a shot is really low. Gosh, I wonder what would happen if you used a mordant. Oh, I have so many thoughts and questions. But anyway, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.